Hey, and welcome back to the podcast. Today we are sitting down to finish our series for August. And so we have the conversation at hand. If you haven't been with us the past couple weeks, we've been talking about this mindset of like coming back to youth group in this back to school season that we're in. And so typically for August, a lot of us, either if we've been meeting all the time, this is kind of a transition back into the ebb and flow of our programming during the school year. Or it's for some of us that don't meet as much over the summer, this might be our transition to where we come back to meeting weekly. And so there's a lot of ground to cover. There's a lot of things to discuss when it comes to our programming week to week and what is important to kind of hit the ground running for the first couple weeks in August. And so we are doing our last episode in this series. And week one, we talked about casting your vision, and we talked about the importance of having that vision concrete and solidified to where you can not only explain it and express it to your students, but also to your leaders, and how it is hard to have a goal or a destination and get a group there if they don't know that goal or if they don't know that destination. And so then secondly, last week, me and David sat down and we started the conversation of building relationships over programming and the importance of starting the year strong with relational strength and building a program, building a group that's relational, building a group that is talking and doing life with each other, and the importance of how relationships have to come before lessons and have to come before events. And so we talked about some ideas on how to intentionally pursue new students, but not also ignore the core students at the same time. And so that was last week's episode. You can definitely go listen to that one. That one was a longer one. I think that one was closer to the hour mark, but we had some great conversation with that. And then this week we are sitting down. So we've talked about vision casting. We've talked about building relationships over prioritizing programming. And this week we are talking about creating a healthy rhythm for leaders and students. And I think that these three go hand in hand. And so today with that, David, what is the importance of a healthy rhythm? I mean, obviously we have rhythms in our life in 100 different ways, but what is the importance of having that healthy rhythm, that structure that we can fall back on?
Yeah, so it goes back to what you just said. Like these really do go hand in hand. I think when you've created a intentional program that balances fun and discipleship um, and relationships, it kind of creates itself. Truth be told, like I can't tell you how many of the best moments, and we've talked about it a lot on the podcast, just because it's so fun to talk about. But like the funnest, most memorable moments of ministry are the ones that are just so organic because you have those relationships built and all these ideas begin to flow because you have if you have an open dialogue with your students and give them ownership, give your volunteers ownership, things happen and you don't have to work so hard. And I don't mean that as a catalyst for being late, or catalyst isn't the right word there. I don't mean this as an opportunity for us to be lazy in what we do, but as a way to go, we really don't have to do everything and have to have every program and have everything written A to Z. Like have a plan in your head and in your heart, and let people know what the plan is. Let people know what the structure is. But once you have the structure, once you have the relationships, a lot of this stuff becomes that the healthy rhythm because you have all the right things in place. And so having good relationships, having a good discipleship program, having a good structure and a balance in your programming, it begins to run itself in a lot of ways. And so it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, definitely. No, and I totally agree with that. And you look at 100 different scenarios, but especially with younger or more inexperienced youth pastors, one of the things that I see all the time is this mindset of like games and energy are at a top 10, like cranked up to 10 level for the first couple weeks, and then they can't keep up with it. keep up with this rhythm that they've set, and so they begin to start losing energy, they start losing their momentum, they start losing the pace, and the students and leaders can't contain it anymore because they set it too high from the get-go.
I
And
say
so it's
this literally all the time, and I'm sorry to
you're good.
interrupt. What you win them with is what you win them to. And if the focus is on that massive high energy, they expect it to stay that way if you do it consistently. So if you consistently do high energy, big rewards, and by rewards, I mean like iPad giveaways, Xbox giveaways, all the things, they're going to come to expect that. And the moment that you don't, the air is out of your tires. What you win them with is what you win them to. We always have to remember that our core thing above anything else, above even the relationships, is that we are here to make sure that people know Jesus above
Yeah.
anything else. Let's win them to Jesus and then have some fun. Or
Yeah.
have some fun while winning them to Jesus. Either way.
Yeah.
But make
Yeah.
main thing the main thing.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's the conversation today. Today we're going to be looking at how to balance fun, how to balance depth and discipleship, how to avoid burnout, and how to build a rhythm that is maintainable for the entire year. And so we're going to look at a couple different things, but obviously like we're not saying, "Hey, don't have fun. Jesus didn't have fun." That's not what we're saying at all. So fun has a place. I do believe, and I've said this multiple times on the podcast, I'm a firm believer that you don't have to have fun and lessons on the same night. I do believe that like you can have relationship building nights to where they're the fun, high energy game activities, stuff like that. They can be on a separate night of the week, maybe just an event planned here and there. And then you just have opportunities for your students to be engaged with one another on lesson nights. And so having fun draws them in. It's a great thing. They'll often come the first time for games or energy, like hype up events, and that's all well and good. But like David said, if you win them with it, that's what you have to do to keep them. And it's something that's very, very dangerous to do. And then other with that though is if it's all fun, if it's all high energy, then you are all surface level and you never allow those students to engage with what they're learning. You would never allow these opportunities for them to go deep. And for that to happen, they need scripture, they need truth, and they need those things to stay rooted. So not only does it allow, like, are you cheating them out of their experience with Jesus, you're also just giving them this really, really shallow youth group that quite honestly was really, really popular in the 90s and early 2000s. And then they leave youth and they're like, well, that was fun, but I really don't want to go to church now because it's not fun.
Yep.
And so we have this model that's broken. And so we need to be working towards this. And I've seen youth ministry take a great trend in this direction over the past decade and a half. And it's just one of those things that like fun is great, but depth and discipleship is where we have to stay. And so beyond just coming out to youth group, they need to learn how to follow and how to practice their spiritual disciplines with Jesus daily. And that's not something that fun and games can do. Like if they feel like they have to be rewarded every time they read their Bible, if they feel like they have to be like just like given a raffle ticket for an Xbox, like David said a little bit ago, for every time that they come to youth group or anything like that, they're not going to come for the reason of growing in their faith. They're coming for the prizes. And so just a practical tip, and I'll just kind of throw this out here. This is kind of how I run things. It's just build your monthly schedule with a mix and a variety of things. I will say that we aim for one fun or one activity that brings people a month. But we find that we actually have more kids come to our Wednesday nights, which is the teaching and worship and everything else. More kids get invited to that than they get invited to the fun games. And so building that schedule, you can do one high energy night. We typically, like I said, once a month, we do Nerf Wars. We do a live action Among Us night, or like we have tasks and activities around the church. And that's not my skill set. Thankfully, I have a associate youth pastor that's awesome at organizing and creating those things. When it gets into the winter, we do Winter Olympics. We do a bunch of different things, and all just have that aspect of we can have fun together, but like we aren't going to put it on the same night because like we want to highlight the importance of Wednesday nights as your time of worship and your time of teaching. And so build those moments, one high energy night, consistent teaching nights. The number of times that I've had a youth pastor not be prepared and just be like, "Hey guys, what do y'all want to do tonight?" You're slacking. You need to have an idea of what you're going to teach. You need to have an idea of where you're going to go. And I say that with a grain of salt because there are great opportunities that you can have to where you let your students take lead and teach and do wonderful things with that. And I've done that in the past. I mentioned last year that from August to May of last year, 23-24, or 24-25, excuse me. Last year, August to May, 24-25, I might have preached 7 times the entire year. And it was because I had so many high school students step up and teach series. And so I had a job to do still. It wasn't just like, hey, get up there and do whatever you want. I still organized. I still helped them write their lessons. I helped with the content. I helped them practice delivery. And so there needs to be a mindset behind what you're doing and how you're doing it. And so teaching nights that are consistent are important. And I'm a firm believer that you should let your students know what's coming in teaching as well. If they don't know what you're teaching on, then like it's kind of like, I mean, like if let's think about this. Why is Netflix so popular? They release a season at a time. You can see the next episode's title as soon as you finish the first episode. And so you're like, "Ooh, that's good. I want to watch that one now." And so giving that little tidbit of information to the students of like, "Hey, we talked about this week. Next 3 weeks we're going to be talking about this and this." Sometimes that's really, really great. And I would say most of the times it really, really is great. That will probably give some of your students excuses to skip lessons that they don't want to be a part of.
But I mean, to your point, I've got 5 or 6 students every single Sunday, every single time we meet. Hey, what are we doing tonight? Like they want to know what we're talking about. They want to know like what game we're going to play. They want to know like what the songs are. And I have some students that ask what the songs are going to be. A couple, they'll ask Sunday morning for Sunday night because they're like, "Hey, could I sing?" I'm like, "Yes, you can." Like you're asking me what the songs are, but you already have an open mic kind of thing. But also, kind of to your point earlier, I want to make sure that you guys are understanding the difference there. And I will apologize too because I kind of had a little bit of a judgy face when you mentioned like not having not coming with a prepared thing, like if you just show up and say, "Hey, what do y'all want to do tonight?" Like to me, that's a little bit lazy, but that doesn't mean that God can't still work in that. So if you're that person,
not saying that at all,
right? But I wanted you to hear the difference here, and I think Brent said it very, very well. But I think that there could be somebody watching that this could be revolutionary for, in helping you strategize a little bit better or be more consistent. Is that there is a difference between showing up, going, "I have absolutely zero plans. We're just going to see where this goes," and always having something in your back pocket. I feel like that's the difference in what Brendan is saying. Is like if you show up with a plan and a structure and a message that if you needed to preach, you could. That is better in the sense that if something like say you have a moment where a student goes, "I just feel like God's put this thing on my heart," and they get up there and they absolutely bring down the house for 2 minutes. That's not bad, but that's not a lot of time. So you may need to fill a little bit more time or whatever. Or I mean, realistically, for me personally though, if someone comes in and only speaks for 2 minutes, then I'm just gonna edify what they said. I'm gonna reiterate a little bit, and I'm just gonna keep that the challenge. I'm not gonna go then turn around and preach unless it's very clearly like, "Hey, I just want to share like a joy." Okay, great. You shared for 2 minutes, and now we're going to shift into this and be aware of that. But ultimately, what Brent is saying is yes, leave room for your students to lead. Leave room for that, but you always need to be prepared. And I think that's biblical, a biblical tie-in. and I don't know the specific scripture. Maybe Brent can look it up or already knows it, but I'm pretty sure scripture says, be ready in all seasons. It's important.
Yeah.
That is not like a suggestion. That's a commandment. Be ready in all seasons, and especially as leaders who get paid. And I know some of us are volunteering, and so it's easy for Brent and I, who are full time people, to say, "Be prepared, work, do your." We're in an office 40 hours a week. Like, if we aren't prepared, then we should be fired. But
Yeah.
so I understand that there's different things, and but that doesn't mean that we can't still put some effort in to the
Sure.
best of our ability. I just wanted to throw that out there.
No, and that's a great point, and that's 100% what I'm saying. I'm not saying don't leave room for the Spirit to move, but I'm saying that for that 2-minute sermon, you need to have enough knowledge and understanding of Scripture and where you can take what they're saying to edify them or to continue that conversation on. And that was one of the things I had to do last year with the high school students. Is some of them, I had a couple students that, like, I had one student do a 4-week series on apologetics, and then I had another student do a 2-week series on leading by example. And so, not that either of them are bad, but the one that led on apologetics, I was like, hey, you have 3 minutes left. You have 2 minutes left. Hey, you have 1 minute left. Hey, time, like, please stop, 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 kind of thing. And then the other one, it was like, hey, I'm going to talk for 10 minutes and then I'm done. And it was like, okay, well, we have an hour of teaching time. So we gotta make this work. And so having that understanding and awareness of where possibilities of going with your students is really, really important. And if your student gets up and says something, I would say more than likely through a little preparation and a little bit of practice, you can probably pick that up and run with it. A good
Yeah.
practice, a good practice that I used to watch one of my pastors do, and this is just a exercise that you can do as well, is just this mindset of like, my pastor growing up used to do this, where they would give a bag to one of the kids that came to church, and then basically that kid could bring anything in that bag, and the pastor would make a Sunday school lesson out of it, or like
Awesome.
make a children's church short sermon out of it. And so, like, the whole game and goal behind this was stump the pastor. And I only saw it happen once. And
Wow.
I grew up in that church, but it was just one of those things, like taking that same practice and just looking and being like, okay, well, like, hey, how can I turn this into a gospel illustration? How can I
Mhm.
turn this into a gospel illustration? How can I turn that into a gospel illustration? Like, looking at my desk, how can I turn AirPods into an illustration? How can I turn car keys into an illustration? How can I turn my coffee cup into an illustration? All of those different moments and different things, just prep and develop that mindset and that focus of like, okay, I know where I can take this, I know where I can take this, and I know where I can take this. And it gives you a little bit of groundwork to be able to push, and kind of, just like David said, edify those students that might have something on their heart, but maybe didn't think out as much as they just had it on their heart.
Right, and that goes back to what we talked about last week with the relationship. It's a great opportunity to, if you know ahead of time, to actually sit down with your student, go take them to coffee, go, take them to lunch, buy them a burger or whatever, and say, hey, what's on your heart, and let's wrestle with this together, and
Yeah.
then at the end of the day, they get up there, exactly what they're going to talk about, not necessarily just to, I think sometimes we do it in the sense of, well, we got to vet and make sure they don't say anything crazy, and there's some truth to that, but at the same time, it's also an opportunity for you to directly shape the heart and the mind of a student who wants to use this gift or this, whatever this thing that God has put on their heart, in a really positive way. And then when you know where they're going with it, I mean, let's be honest, we've all seen it happen. A student gets up there with all this passion and all this excitement. They get up there in front of their friends and they just get scared. And there's nothing wrong with that at all, because I mean, it is a very, any of us who've gotten on a stage or gotten in front of people, we know it's terrifying at times. And they get up there and they may skip half their points because they got so scared that they rushed through it, and they missed like the best part, because you spent the time to build that relationship and go through that. When you go to edify, you can say, hey, and you don't even have to go up on stage to do this. I've actually had a student do this where they got up there and I was like, hey, and I asked a question that basically just said, hey, what do you think about this? And I knew it was one of their points because I've seen their notes. And you see the little like light bulb go in their eyes and they go, oh, I didn't talk about that. And then they get all excited. And you've edified them by asking one question and sit back and they get to continue in that. And it's a really cool thing. So it doesn't even have to be we take over. It could be, hey, what do you think about this? And they're like, I got you. They also look smart because it seems like on the, to everybody else, they're like, oh, wow, that was a really quick, fast answer. They already had it. They were prepared. You just made sure that they got the opportunity. So,
Yeah, definitely. And I totally agree with what you said on the mindset of like, um, I'm all about the students having a opportunity to speak and an opportunity to share stuff. But I also am going to be the first person to say, I probably wouldn't let a student come up to me the week of and say, hey, I have something to talk to. Partially because I want to flesh it out more. I want to make sure that they have their thoughts planned out and organized. And I want them to use, like you said, it's moving into kind of the last thing as far as like building up your schedule is just this opportunity for discipleship opportunities. And so if a student comes up to me and is like, "Hey, I think I might have something to talk about. Could I lead a lesson?" And I leave weeks in my schedule every single year, fall and spring semester, for students to fill in if they have something on their heart. And it's one of those things that like it's super super important, but it also, now I use it as an opportunity for discipleship because they might have an idea and they might have something that God laid on their hearts, but they might have thought about it this much. And then I want them to fully elaborate that thought and really, really flesh out what God's trying to tell them and allow them to have time to chew and meditate on it. And they probably have a little bit, but I want to help in that process as a discipler and let them grow in the fact that God's talking to them, help them understand what God's saying to them, and then allow them to present the full presentation of what God was saying to them or what God laid on their heart. And it's not going to hurt anybody for that to be a week later or 2 weeks later or something to that nature. And it's like you said, it's really, really easy just to be like, hey, that's awesome. I love that you want to speak. Could we meet for coffee next week and kind of flesh out this idea a little bit more? And then, like, next Wednesday, I'm all for you listening. I'm all for you leading, as long as like we have some time to flesh it out and think through this.
well, and the other
I,
cool thing too is from an advertising standpoint, you now have the opportunity to go to your church on Sunday and say, hey, this Wednesday night, this person, I'm just going to throw out someone who's been on our
yeah,
podcast before. Taylor Wood that's one of his students, has an incredible thing on her heart, and she's going to share it on Wednesday night. We'd love to invite all of you to come and check it out and hear that. Her family gets to be a part. You've invited the church, which is
yeah,
always a win when you can bring the church into your programming. And if say 2 to 3 people from the congregation showed up on that night and was blessed by that, that's a huge win for you. That's a huge win for her. That's a huge win for everybody. So it's
yeah.
one of those situations too. I mean, like I said, then parents get an opportunity to be there,
Yeah.
because they don't want to miss those moments.
Yeah, definitely. No, and I think that's great. And it's just one of those things. It's if you provide those opportunities for discipleship, or it's not even necessarily that you provided that opportunity. There are many opportunities for discipleship that you can provide yourself. But also just recognizing the awareness of like being, hey, this could be a moment. I'm going to take this and run with it. And so using that moment, and I think last week we talked about Jesus using what they were experiencing at the time with his disciples. It wasn't like Jesus was planning, hey, so I'm going to be at this wedding in 8 months and they're going to run out of wine and then they're going to ask me to come do this water thing and I'm going to turn water into wine. So Jesus was just at the wedding and this happened. And in all reality, if you look at scripture, Jesus was like, chill, woman, my time has not yet come. Leave me alone. And so more than likely, this was even Jesus saying like, nah, it's all right, like kind of thing. But it was still a moment in time where they were all together that Jesus was like, hey, look, I can make this a moment. I can use this as a discipleship opportunity. And that's all we're doing with our moments like that with students as well. And we might not be turning water into wine, but we can turn an idea into a full thought. And so very, very much like find moments for those discipleship opportunities. Also, if you have any possibility, throw small groups into the mix. Maybe for you, that's a different night of the week where like you have a teaching night on, for instance, David does Sundays. Maybe David does a teaching night on Sunday nights and David does small groups on Wednesdays. Or maybe David does a teaching moment early on Saturday night, and then they follow up with small groups to kind of chat about what he's been discussing. There's so many different opportunities, but having the students be able to take what they've heard and put it into their own words and answer questions and work through those, it's just another process of allowing them to fully think out and think through what they're learning. And that has proven time and time again to be the best way to maintain things.
Yeah.
Having those moments to let them talk through what they just heard.
So, kind of, we've been on topic this whole time, but we have not followed our notes at all.
I was too.
Which is a beautiful. Okay, maybe you were. I wasn't. I haven't even looked at my notes. We're 27 minutes in, and I haven't looked at my notes one time.
I love it.
But I'll say this: one thing that you talked about, or that we had talked about last week, is starting with a fun night. I was interested. How did your night go last week, and where are you going to follow up with that this week?
Yeah, so last week I talked, and in the episode I actually put it up on screen share so you can see it if you look at the video podcast from last week. There is a resource called Alpha Youth Film Series, and that's what I stole it from. But they basically use this illustration of a pool, and talking about like, you know, if this pool represents your faith, and there's like 20 characters on this picture. Some are swimming in the pool. There's one standing on a diving board. There's two guys that kind of look like they're in lab coats that are just kind of leaning over the edge of the pool, looking down into the pool, watching and observing everything. There's a dude over in the corner, like flexing in a mirror. There's a dude sitting with a typewriter at a table, like all kinds of stuff. And so it's one of those things that I like to pull out every now and then and just be like, ask my students of like, hey, like in order for us to better fulfill our mission, which our mission is love God, love students, offer Jesus, or offer Christ. And in order for me to work towards accomplishing our goal with our leaders, which is we win when our students take a step in their faith, we have to know where they are. And so it's just a simple question of like, hey, what picture best describes you? What character in this story best describes you? And so with that, I gave a form that updated all of our information. If our students got new cell phone numbers or emails or anything like that, I got that information. But then at the bottom, I said, hey, take a second and think through your relationship with Jesus right now. If your relationship with Jesus is this pool, like what character best fits you? And I got all their responses. And so I tabulated all of their responses. And now I have a database of every student that was there last week of saying, hey, this is why, or this is the character that I relate with. But then I also made them explain why, because that is huge in your understanding of where they are. Because I had 4 different people, well, actually we had 50 people do the pool picture, and I probably had 12 of the 50 say that they were on the diving board, and I probably had 8 different explanations of what the diving board meant. And so it gives me an opportunity to see, okay, well, all right, they say that they're the guy on the diving board ready to jump in, but some of them were like, man, I'm diving in, I'm head first, I'm all in, I'm going, and others were like, I'm on the edge,
I'm going.
yeah, sorry. Exactly. But and others were like, man, I'm on the edge, I know it all, I'm ready to make the jump, I just haven't yet. And there is a huge dynamic between those 2 explanations that were on the same picture. And so it was one of those things. And now I've already sent this out to my leaders, and they will, I organized it by grade level because our students are like, we meet in groups by grade. And so my sixth grade leaders have all of the sixth grade answers and the corresponding picture. And then my seventh and eighth grade leaders have that. And then I have all the information for the high school. And for the high school, there were a couple that even left it like they circled a picture, but they didn't give me an explanation. And I followed up with every single one of them this past week. And I said, I'm not letting you do that. Give me a reason on why this is your character.
Thank you. I saw these like NAs and I was like, that's cheap.
Yeah. So, and yeah, with that, I followed up with every single one of them and was like, hey, you didn't give me an explanation. I need to know why. And so it just, once again, gives them an opportunity to think through where they are. Some of them probably were like, I don't really know. And it gives them an opportunity to just maybe think through that for the first time, or it gives them an opportunity to be like, yeah, I'm right here. This is exactly where I am. Been here for a while. And it was really, really funny. And I got some responses that I was just like, whoa, that's crazy cool. And so it's just like, there's so many different responses. And like I said, it's in the last episode. You can find that picture. Or if you just put Alpha Youth Pool in Google, they'll pull up the picture on Google and you can find it and do that. But it was a really, really cool opportunity. And now I'm going to utilize that for the remainder of the semester on saying, hey, like, this is where the student feels like they are. How do we work with them and walk alongside them to give them the opportunity to take their next step?
Yeah. If they're observing, how do we get them to get into the water? If they're ready to dive in, how do we utilize that where they get the best result from? Yeah, I think that's beautiful, man. So you had a lot of fun last week. That's your high energy fun.
Yes, our high energy fun. And every year that we do, I'm not a high energy guy. I'm not a games person at all. We do this for the sake of, I see value in it, even though I hate it.
Yeah.
And so we had absolute pandemonium and chaos last week. And I embrace it and I deal with it for a week. And then I move on to the teaching nights that we do for the rest of the Wednesday nights for the school
what
year.
does tonight look like?
Okay. And so with that, like, we start with our lessons tonight. And it is, once again, kind of working towards that, building the schedule, building this routine, building this fallback that they know what's going to happen every single week. And so from tonight through the rest of the year, outside of a handful of nights where we have all church activities or something like that, like our church participates in Ash Wednesday, and so we come down and do the Ash Wednesday service with our church. And for Easter, our church does an Easter drama, and so the Wednesday before Easter, our youth goes down and watches the Easter drama with the rest of our church and stuff like that. There's a handful of things here and there that are still routine. Our kids know they're coming, but it's one of those that breaks us out of our routine of doing every single week. And so we do every single week the exact same way. We have an all church meal from 5 to 6. Students are welcome to come if they want to. They don't have to. 6 o'clock sharp, we start worship. And we worship from 6 to 6:30. And that's when we do announcements. That's when we do worship. We have a student-led worship team. And then from 6:30 to 7:35, we have teaching. And we use that opportunity to where they split into their groups. And so I dive into what I'm starting on, which is a series on grace and mercy and justice. Tonight, and we'll spend 4 weeks in that. Our sixth grade are going to start their foundational stuff. They spend an entire year talking through foundational elements of faith. And then our 7th and 8th graders start the New Testament this week. And so they're going to be watching The Chosen, and watching snippets of The Chosen and talking through Jesus's ministry and talking about different things that go on during the Gospels and how they impact our lives and what matters and what happens. And then they'll close out the year looking at a few different letters from Paul, because obviously we don't have a ton of time to do the whole Bible in like 26 weeks or whatever. And so, but we build this routine and we build this structure, and the kids know and expect what's coming, and we give them the opportunity to utilize that because they know what's coming. And it's a really, really good deal. And the other thing with this is, like, which leads to the next point, is just this mindset of, with us having this routine and with us having this structure and this schedule, we have it built to where we will not burn ourselves out. And so I say this full force because there's a couple different ways that we do this. First off, our students and our leaders know what we do every single Wednesday, so they have planned and prepared for it. And so burnout, it does not happen on Wednesday nights because they know what's coming. Secondly, I give my volunteers opportunities. I don't lose like an ounce of sleep when one of them tells me they can't be there on a Wednesday. We do set the expectation with our leaders that we would like them there at least 75% of the year, because we want to build that structure and that foundation that we've been talking about. And we want our kids to be able to rely on the fact that their leaders are going to be there. That's a huge deal. And so we do allow leaders to step out and we fill in when we need to, but building that structure of doing everything. And then the other mindset of, we don't have to have games every week. We don't have to do it all every week. That is the number one case of burnout, is you trying to do everything every single time that you meet together, because that is absolutely huge. Too many events, too many high activity, high engaging things can exhaust you, can exhaust your leaders. And if you burn your leaders out, you're going to bring more burnout to you. And then finally, the other aspect of it is we're blessed with a big enough volunteer group that we tell our Wednesday night leaders also, they are not expected to show up to anything else. They don't have to come to Sunday school. They don't have to come to our fun evening like our fun game night activities. They don't have to come to camps. They don't have to come to anything. What we do on Wednesday nights is their domain. And so we just ask them to make it a priority to be present on Wednesday nights. And that's a huge deal for us because, like I said, we're building that rhythm and we're building that reliability of routine. So it's a really, really big thing for us. And then the other side of this is just having the mindset and the desire to create healthy boundaries. Guard your own time, guard your own soul. You cannot be at everything. You cannot do everything. The number of times that I have literally not gone to an entire year of a football game. And if you're in Texas and you're listening to this, you're like, I didn't go to a single football game last year. I didn't have a student in football. I didn't really want to go to a football game, so I didn't. Now my oldest is getting into the age where he's probably going to start wanting to go, and that's totally fine. But I did not go just because it was there. And so building up those opportunities to where when you are running on empty or when you have these other things going on, you have to prioritize time that you can rebuild, you can recharge, and you can reset, and find those opportunities to where it's like, is this something I have to be at? No. Okay, then I'm not going to do it. I do make it a priority that I try to go to. If a student directly asks me to come to an event, I do everything that I can to be there. If I can't be there, I try to get my associate youth pastor or one of the leaders to be there just so they show support to that student. But I also will say that if I have a student in theater that asks me to come to all 7 of their plays in 1 year, I'm going to say no. Because I'm going to say, hey, look, I came to one of yours. I need the time and I need the flexibility to go to other things for other students. And so that way I'm not trying to make 18 events in 1 week. I'm not trying to make every football, soccer, basketball, volleyball, baseball, track, whatever meet. I'm not trying to do that because that is not something that I need to do. And so creating those boundaries is really, really good. And then the other time is it's okay to say no. The number of times that I've had a parent come up to me and be like, hey, I think this would be a really, really cool opportunity. And we should probably just do this. And I'm like, mm-mm. We talked about this 2 weeks ago with our vision casting. One of the easiest ways to say no is if it doesn't fit with your mission statement, don't do it. So ours, like I said, is love God, love students, offer Christ. If someone presents an opportunity for us that doesn't fall into those categories, it's an easy no. And I have ammunition and backup to support it. If it is something that goes into those, I definitely give it more thought and give it more time to kind of marinate. But I can still say no to it, but I have to have ample reason on why. And just because I don't want to is not a good enough reason. But just because you can do another trip or can do another event doesn't mean you should. Healthy boundaries are what keeps ministry sustainable. We had a guest on a couple, oh gosh, I say a couple weeks ago. It's been over a year ago now, I'm sure. His name was Jerry Varner, and he talked about boundaries, but he talked about calendars. And he said, your calendar should be a map and a mirror. And that stuck with me because your calendar, he was like, let me see your calendar and I'll tell you when you'll burn out. And it was just like, whew, okay. Like that's a really, really strong statement, but it's one that has a ton of impact when it comes to what we do. Because if you have too much on your schedule, it is easy to predict when and where and how you're going to burn out. And so don't overdo yourself. You are one person. Make sure you have a team. Do your best to utilize that. If you don't have a team, like if you don't have adult volunteers, you really need some. But prioritize the students that are in high school that will step up and do some of those things for you. And it just gives them an opportunity to lead. And that might be welcoming and being a greeter. That might be if you take attendance or take roll, which you should if you don't. That might be someone running the computer that checks in people as they get there. That might be making sure the fridge is full when they get there. That might be making sure that all of the technology is turned on when they get there, or setting out chairs, or all of the things that you don't necessarily have to do that you can easily utilize someone else to do in the process. So very, very much guard your heart, guard your soul, guard your time. Say no. That doesn't mean say no to everything, but that means that if you have a rhyme and a reason for a schedule that you've already set in time and someone else says, hey, I know you have an event on this Saturday and 2 Saturdays from now, but we don't have an event on the Saturday in between. We should probably do this. It's okay to say no.
And it's all about being intentional with your time. Saying yes to one thing means you have to say no to something else. That's just truth. We are not robots. And sometimes we are expected to be. Sometimes we are thrown into positions and roles. I mean, let's be completely honest. How many of our job descriptions say other duties as assigned? And sometimes those other duties go so far out of the scope of not just what we can do, but what we even should be doing. And sometimes that's having those healthy conversations, not just with volunteers, but even with leadership and even your pastor to say, hey, can we strategically look at this? Because like you want me to do this and that's great, but to say yes to this means I have to say no to something else. So let's take a look at my calendar. If you want me to do this thing, because I'm only bringing this up because I do know that there are a lot of pastors out there who are youth pastors, children ministers, all of that, who are expected to do some things that really are quite out of your realm. And so having a healthy conversation with your pastor to say, hey, for me to do that, I'll do it, but I need to probably scale back from something else. So let's take a look at it. And sometimes in being able to do that, they start to go, oh, well, you're doing X, Y, and Z. This really doesn't fit. And maybe you're not the right person to do that. Maybe I should step up, or maybe someone else, or, can we, something my pastor says a lot is he might bring an idea, and the way that he typically will say it is, hey, here's a thing that I think we should do. Who is somebody that we can put in that position? He doesn't always just say, hey, you go do this thing. He'll say, hey, can you take the next week or so, or however long, depending on our time frame, to find somebody to step up. So like a real prime example of that, I'm preaching on September 7th, and I am so used to being the guy that does the worship and the announcements and the game and all the things. And so it's not anything for me to do worship and preach. He hates that. He's like, dude, you need to focus on one thing at a time. He's like, you are already leading Sunday school. A lot of times you have to be the sound guy. You're leading worship and you're going to preach. That's too much. And so you're going to preach on the 7th, which is great. So who's going to lead worship for you instead? And the first few times he said that, it drove me crazy because I was like, well, you're limiting me. And he goes, yeah, I'm limiting you for your mental, for your physical, for your emotional, for your spiritual health. I would not be a good boss if I let you continue to do that because that's what you just came from and you're burning out. So yeah, I want you to preach on the seventh. Who's gonna take over and lead worship for you? Because you leading is not an option. He's like, I'll let you play guitar or I'll let you play drums if you're missing an instrument, but you're not the guy leading. You're supporting. I was like, that's fair. So
Yeah. No. And I think that's good. And I mean, I definitely say all that I said with the mindset and understanding that some people listening to this podcast probably do not have supportive staff. I'd wager roughly even half of you or more don't have supportive staff. Just the dynamic of churches that we work with today. But it's one of those things that, like, finding those opportunities to where you can speak rationally. And if you have a pastor that might not be supportive, last thing I want to do is say, go stage a coup and like cause an uprising against your pastor, because that's not what I'm saying at all. Like, I'm a firm believer that you, as a youth pastor, part of your job responsibility is getting on board with your pastor's vision. We did an episode on that too, Luke Gajeri, a long time ago. That was one of the first ones. But with that, just this mindset of like, we have a responsibility to be a unified church. And sometimes that unification doesn't mean that it's our idea. We support other ideas. And so if you have a pastor that's telling you to do something, respectfully disagreeing, but respectfully disagreeing in a logical approach, like David said, of just this mindset of like, hey, like, I totally see the importance and the validity of what you're asking me to do, but I'm already doing this and this and this and this in that time frame. And so either I need some of these other responsibilities taken off of me, or can we work together to find someone that could fill this spot? I think that there's plenty of opportunity in that. Most of the times, especially pastors in smaller churches, they're overclocked and overwhelmed and overworked anyways. So a lot of times it's not necessarily a like, hey, I don't like you, so I'm just going to give you all the things that I don't want to do. A lot of times it's a, hey, I'm already doing everything else. I'm just trying to take a few things off my plate so I can practice the same healthy boundaries. And sometimes we get trapped up in our own goal and effort of trying to get those off of our plate, that we don't care that we dump them on someone else that might already be full. And it's not necessarily lack of care, it's overlooking sometimes. And so I definitely would say give benefit of the doubt in most of those situations, because it does happen. You tend to, especially when you're overworked and when you're overbooked, you don't have time to think about other people's responses and their emotions and their actions, and how they would do and how they would respond to things.
but we
So
need to.
you need to. Not saying that's
Mhm.
not saying that's not a needed thing, but I'm saying give benefit of the doubt when your pastor might ask you to do something that
Mhm.
might potentially overbook you, but approaching them with that logical response might give them the time that they need to be like, oh yeah, that is, man, I really
Mhm.
don't want to add more to your plate because I know you're already doing a ton. Maybe we can find someone else together that can do this.
And remember
Um,
that the way that you present it matters. If you come at it from a
yeah,
graceful, humble place of saying, "Hey, I'm not trying to be defensive by any means, but like, hey, I was really thinking through it, and I was talking it over with my wife, and I just feel like, you know, I just want to look at this, and
yeah,
it can for those people who don't have a supportive staff or supportive leader or pastor or whatever it might be, it could be an opportunity to build a bridge to establish a relationship there, even when it's broken. I've seen a lot of situations that are very very broken, but that doesn't mean that we can't fix and repair, because truth be told, anything that's broken, there is a lot, not always, but there is typically a set of steps that can take it from broken to fixed. But we have to play ball and try. And at the end
yeah,
of the day, if you do that and you build a bridge there, I can't say that they're going to respond. You can't control how they're going to respond. But at the end of
Yeah.
the day, if you did all the steps to try to build it and repair it and to do all those things and they didn't play ball, that's not on you.
Yeah.
You can hang your hat knowing you tried. You did it
Yeah.
right. And sometimes that's just rising above because we are called to do that.
Yeah. And so, and the other side of this, and this is kind of to close out the burnout idea and point, it's just the mindset of, I know that nobody wants to think of this. I know that nobody wants to kind of plan this out, but it's okay to leave a church. Like, you might feel a time and a season that you're called to a church, but if that church is not respecting you and that church is not doing their if that church is not being a church, then it's okay to walk out and find another job. It's okay to walk and find another opportunity to serve and another opportunity to where you can be a benefit to someone else's ministry. Because whether you're doing ministry in one town or another, you're still doing ministry.
Mm-hmm.
And you still have an opportunity to make an impact in the lives of kids. It might be different kids, but like at the end of the day, you will impact no kids if you burn out and leave the church.
Mm-hmm. And I'll say this, to that point, Britt and I have both been in those positions.
Yep.
And so if you feel like even a small part of you feels like maybe you need to at least have that conversation, this podcast is called Student Ministry Conversation. It's not just us talking to hear ourselves talk. Call us,
We would
email
love to
us.
talk.
We want to talk to you. We invite you to our virtual table, but it doesn't have to
Yeah.
be virtual. Like, come, reach out to us. We'd love to have a conversation with you because we have navigated that before.
Yeah.
And if nothing else, we can be a good sounding board. And maybe as simple as, yeah, you need to keep pushing through, or maybe it is time.
Yeah.
We've been in both positions. We'd be happy to at least have that conversation with you because it's a healthy conversation to have, and it's an
Yeah.
important conversation to have.
Well, and I'll say that we both navigated out of those hard churches into healthy churches,
Yeah,
or into healthy leadership church like leaderships.
yeah.
Sometimes the church doesn't necessarily have it, but everything has different ebbs and flows. But we either navigated into a healthy church that had healthy leadership, or we navigated into at least a church that has healthy leadership. And so it's very, very important. And so the last point that I had for today was just this mindset, and it's something that we've already talked about. It's just building consistency fosters spiritual growth. And this goes back to the first thing we talked about. If you build a consistent night, a consistent rhythm, and a flow that helps them feel secure, they are going to thrive on that predictability. Students like to know what's going on. They like to know what to expect. And so doing that is super, super important. The other people that really, really, really love predictability and consistency is parents. And so you need to be communicating with parents on a weekly basis, letting them know what to expect so they can plan around it. Because if you plan an event and don't tell your parents about it and you're frustrated that no one shows up, it's your fault. It's not anybody else's, because you didn't communicate that effectively and you should have done better communicating. Sometimes we just communicate to the best of our abilities and it's just a bad night. It's okay to throw an audible and be like, hey, I emailed parents. I had like 75% of our parents respond back and say that this weekend was not going to be a good weekend. They're all going to be out of town because it's a vacation holiday or something to that nature. The number of times I've put an event on a 4-day weekend and not thought it through.
Yeah.
Just it happens. And
Yeah,
so
it does.
being able to call an audible and flip that and maybe just be like, hey, we're going to move this back a week. I didn't think through that. That's on me. But I appreciate your feedback, and I appreciate all of y'all responding to my email and saying that you were going to be out of town. It just helps for that nature. And then finally, discipleship takes time. We talk all the time about how the death of youth ministry was not bad youth pastors. The death of youth ministry was life expectancy of youth pastors. And so if you are going and your goal is to be in a youth job for like 6 months to a year and then you're going to move on, you're not giving yourself enough time. pretty much every statistic that I've ever read towards youth ministry says that the average health and the average discipleship for it to flourish and start for a program is 3 to 4 years. Typically within that year 3 to year 4, that's the sweet spot to where it really, really starts clicking and taking off. And the more time you spend in your church, the more predictability, the more consistency, the more that people know what they're getting into. And so there's more buy-in, there's more focus, there's more involvement. But small groups, mentoring, and regular teaching create long-term fruit, not one-time events. So one-time events are fun, but if you plan the one-time event yet don't meet week to week, like you're missing out on those opportunities for discipleship. And then pro tip, hopefully all of you have this by now, use a calendar. You need to have, so I do I use a calendar that's 4 months. And so I have found that the kind of the sweet spot, at least in our ministry, is we call our fall calendar from September to December. We call our summer calendar, or our spring calendar, January to April. And then we call our summer calendar May to August. And so that gives the weaning out of school and the weaning back into school for the summer. And because we're typically trying to do end of year stuff or beginning of summer stuff, or we have all those different things happening. And so having that I've found that 4 month to be super consistent and super like the sweet spot for our ministry. And so planning out the activities and the service projects and all of that ahead of time is super, super important. But I would say that you also need a semester teaching calendar, at least a semester teaching calendar. If you don't know where you're going for the semester, that would be my challenge and my goal for you to start thinking through is how do you start organizing your thoughts and organizing your direction to where you might not have a fully thought out idea for every single week of the semester, but you have a theme. You have, if it's a series, you know how many weeks you're going to talk on it. You know the topic for each of those weeks of that series. And then you have a scriptural buy-in for each of those. And that's what I do. My semester's planned out. And sometimes that means that I have on my teaching schedule, student teach 2 weeks in random spots throughout, and I'm planning and preparing for those, like for students to step up and teach in those weeks.
Yeah.
So use those opportunities and like plan everything.
Yeah. If you're not super type A administrative kind of person, find somebody in your ministry that is, and go take them to coffee. You'll notice a theme here. We always say take people to coffee. Why? Because it's relational. Did a whole podcast. If you missed it last week, go back and listen to it. But again, if you're not that person that you're super administrative, that's fine. If you're also not a creative type and you're like, man, I don't necessarily know how to put together a fun and compelling calendar, there are tons and tons and tons of resources out there on all the Facebook youth pastor groups. I think we still have a customizable calendar on our website. Is that true?
It can be. I don't know if I've updated it because we've been having website issues.
Right. Well, that too, and one of the other issues too is because it was a customizable Canva template. I know at one point we would have people customize the original, and so people would go to download it, and they're like, "What is this? Isn't a template. Yeah. This is somebody's calendar." And so Brent was constantly having to undo. So that's why I asked the question. But if you need a template,
I still use it. It's just the calendar that I use, and I just put it as a template on there.
Essentially, yes. But if you need one, reach out. Brent has lots of Canva resources. I typically build my own, but it's a good opportunity to get consistent. And then, do a Google search and say youth ministry calendar and look at the youth ministry calendar designs. There are some really creative, fun ideas that people put up there. And parents love that. They love anything visual. They love anything they can put on a fridge. My wife and I put everything on a fridge, and that's where it's got to be. Yeah. That's how we know what we have to plan. And there's a lot of families that are going at warp speed, and they need something visual that they can look at from week to week to know what their kids are supposed to be doing. Yeah. So reach out.
Yeah, definitely. And so to kind of throw in and do our last ideas of, like I said, for the past 2 weeks, we're starting with a biblical tie-in for these episodes as well. And our tie-in for this week is Luke chapter 5, verse 16. And that's, but Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed. Even Jesus built healthy rhythms into his life and into his ministry. His pattern was ministry, retreat, prayer, and then ministry again. Like you can see it time and time and time again in Scripture. Youth pastors and leaders should imitate this rhythm, pouring out while also making time to be filled. And so our challenge for you this week is to look at your fall calendar, if you have one. If you don't, get on it. Look at your fall calendar and say, is this sustainable? Or am I going to burn myself out with the calendar that I've already presented to the church? Make one adjustment that prioritizes balance over busyness, and then encourage leaders by checking in on their pace and their energy. One thing that I do with my leaders every single year, and I try to do this at least twice a year, is I take all of my leaders out to lunch. Some of them, it's difficult because some of them are teachers, and so it's harder for me to get in and do that opportunity with teachers, but I try to do an intentional thing where I can not only see how ministry is going for them, but I can also just step in and be like, hey, how are you doing? Like, how is your family life going? How is your career going? Like, are you at a place where you're still healthy? What can I do to support you? And that's something that I try to do with all of my volunteers as well. Like I said, sometimes teachers make it really, really difficult, but my goal is for every single person to have that opportunity so they can touch base and we can meet and I can check in with them at least twice a year. And so check in on their pace, check in on their energy, check in on their wellness. Sometimes, just volunteers have bad years too. And they might be going through some stuff. They might need prayer. They might need accountability. They might just need someone to listen. And your job is to be there for your volunteers as well as your students. Final encouragement is ministry is a marathon and not a sprint. If you set up a healthy rhythm now, you and your students will have the strength to finish the year strong. So begin to prepare that marathon. And if you have been sprinting, stop. Do your best to make it a long-term deal. Do your best to set the healthy rhythms so you can succeed in your ministry. You can bring students into deeper accountability and discipleship, and that ultimately just fosters spirit growth. David, any closing comment or thought?
Yeah, I know that rest work balance is a really challenging thing. This is something that I quite literally had to relearn. And I'm not even relearn. I had to learn it just in general. This last year has been all about learning how to balance my workaholic tendencies. And there were so many times where Brent and I would literally butt heads because he's looking at me like, dude, you've got to stop. You're killing yourself. One point he literally said, you are killing yourself. And I've spent the entire last year learning how to prioritize my health, my time, resting. I take days off now. Like, I know it can be hard, but it's important work. And I'm telling you, like, it's been good for my marriage. It's been good for my son, who is, he's 8 years old, and right now I'm still his hero. So I'm enjoying being, super dad for like 2 more years until he starts hating me. So I want to enjoy that. You know what I mean? And so those rests, taking vacations, when your pastor says, hey, take a day off, not getting mad, but going, thank you for giving me that. I know it's hard. Come talk to me. If you're kind of like, that doesn't seem possible. I was there. I am literally the poster child for thinking it was not possible. And now I see that Brent was right and I was wrong. And I'll just go ahead and say, thanks, buddy.
I'm going to keep that on recording so I can just loop that in my ear over and over and over.
You were right. I was wrong.
But with that being said, we are over the hour mark for this episode, and I'm laughing because
I said this would be the shortest.
Yeah. We were like, this is going to be the shortest episode, and then like it is the longest one out of the series, but I think it's because there is a great importance in this conversation. Finding that rhythm and finding that routine is super, super important. If you have any comments or questions, we'd love to hear from you. You can reach out to us at Talk Student Men on any social media, or email us podcast@studentministryconversations.org. We'd love to hear from you. We quite honestly, we don't hear from our listeners very often. And that is definitely something that we love to do when we have the opportunity. And then finally, like David said multiple times throughout the conversation, if this is something you struggle with, reach out to us. Brent at Student Ministry Conversations, David at Student Ministry Conversations. We both have emails. You can reach out to us. You can find us on Facebook. You can do whatever you need to do and have those conversations. And maybe you just need someone that'll listen, and we are more than willing to be that person for anybody listening to this podcast. So with that being said, we hope you have a great week, and we will see you again next week.